I'm sorry, this is a conflict of interest cleanup, the HR director said, eyes fixed on the table. Effective immediately, your position has been eliminated. Your wife approved the decision this morning. That sentence landed before the coffee in my hand had cooled. Monday, 9:07 a.m. I remember because the clock on the wall had stopped ticking, or maybe my head did. What I remember most is the way my name sounded in her mouth, like it belonged to someone she'd never met. I'm 38. I was a project manager at a mid-sized logistics firm in Seattle, the kind of job that keeps the city humming but never makes headlines. I'd been there 9 years. My wife Mara had been there 6. We met in the break room over a broken vending machine and stayed together for 11 years, married for 8. Long enough to learn the difference between silence that's peaceful and silence that's rehearsed. The distance didn't arrive with a fight. It arrived with routines. Mara stopped asking how my day went and started asking what meetings I had. She learned my calendar better than my moods. She'd come home late, shoes still on, scrolling through emails at the counter saying she'd eat later. When I touched her shoulder, she'd lean forward, not away, subtle but enough. The way people do when they want you to notice without confronting them. When she was promoted to interim director, we celebrated with takeout eaten from containers on the couch. She talked about clean lines and professional optics. I listened. I clapped. I said I was proud. I meant it. I didn't know pride could be used as a blindfold. The week before Monday, she'd asked me to update my resume, just in case. She said it casually, like she was reminding me to buy milk. When I laughed and asked what she knew that I didn't, she smiled and said, "Nothing. Just being smart." On Monday, HR slid a folder across the table. Severance details. A non-disparagement clause. A printed email with her name typed at the bottom. Not signed. Typed. It said my role was redundant under the new structure. It said the company appreciated my contributions. Did not say thank you. I walked out carrying a box with a mug I'd never liked and a framed photo of Mara and me on a ferry years ago. She was leaning into me then, hair whipped by wind, laughing at something I'd said. I stared at that photo in the elevator and tried to reconcile it with the email. I didn't call her. I wanted to. I wanted to give her a chance to say it wasn't like that. That there was a rule. That she'd fought. I went home instead and sat on the edge of the bed. The box on the floor like a small coffin. She came in at 7. Didn't look surprised to see me there. "You're home early," she said, hanging her coat. "They let me go," I said. She nodded. Once. Like she was checking off a list. "I didn't have a choice," she said before I could ask anything. "The board was very clear. You approved it." She met my eyes. For a moment something flickered. Then it flattened. "I approved the structure," she said. "Your role didn't fit." It was the phrasing that hurt. "Not you. Your role." "Did you tell them we're married?" I asked. "They know. And it was decided this was the cleanest option." Clean. The word hung there. Clean like a cut. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I asked what I thought were reasonable questions. Had there been any discussion of reassignment? Any warning? Any consideration? She answered in sentences that sounded rehearsed, full of words like alignment and risk. That night she slept facing the wall. The betrayal wasn't just the job. It was what came after. The way she started referring to the company as we, and my unemployment as your transition. The way she asked me to keep our situation private because optics matter. She told me not to tell my parents yet. She asked me to be supportive of her. 2 weeks later, I ran into Evan at a coffee shop downtown. Evan was a consultant who'd been brought in during the restructuring. He was charming in that effortless way that makes rooms tilt toward him. He greeted me like an old friend, then paused, eyes flicking to my hands. "Hey," he said slowly. "How's everything?" "Fine," I said. It was a reflex. He hesitated. I didn't know if never mind. I watched him decide not to say something. It felt like watching someone close a door you hadn't known was open. That night I asked Mara if there was anything else I should know. She didn't answer right away. She took a sip of wine, then another. "I didn't want this to be messy," she said. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means," she said carefully, "that I outgrew us." I waited. The silence stretched. "Evan and I," she said. It wasn't like that at first. There it was. Not a confession. A footnote. How long? I asked. Since before the promotion. So you fired me, I said. And you're sleeping with the guy who helped design the plan. She winced. That's an unfair framing. What's the fair one? I asked. That my feelings changed. That the company needed stability. That you weren't aligned with where I'm going. Aligned. Another word. The confrontation didn't have shouting. It had coldness. Precision. She told me she'd felt like my caretaker. That my steadiness had become stagnation. That loving me had been easy, and she needed something harder. I never loved you the way you needed, she said finally. You were convenient. Convenient. The word scraped. I didn't beg. I surprised myself with that. I felt hollow, like begging would echo too loudly. Instead, I asked her to move out. She said the condo was closer to her office. She said she'd sleep in the guest room. The turning point didn't come with clarity. Came with collapse. I stopped getting out of bed before noon. I watched sunlight crawl across the ceiling like it was measuring time without me. I refreshed my email obsessively. Rejection letters stacked up. Polite. Efficient. One afternoon I found myself standing in the kitchen, holding a plate, unsure if I'd eaten. I looked at my reflection in the microwave door, and didn't recognize the man staring back. His shoulders were slumped in a way mine never had been. His face was older. Quieter. That was when I stopped asking her questions. Not because I'd forgiven her, but because I understood something simple and brutal. Answers wouldn't give me dignity. Boundaries would. I packed a bag and left before she came home. I stayed with a friend for a week, then found a short-term sublet across town. I filed paperwork. I spoke to a lawyer. I sent one email to HR correcting a detail in my severance. I kept my voice steady. Months passed. Mara and I spoke only through text about logistics. She sent messages about scheduling movers, about bills. Once she sent a photo of the ferry. Remember this? And I didn't respond. I took contract work. Smaller projects. Less money. More quiet. I relearned the shape of my days. I cooked. I walked. I slept. The resolution wasn't a victory parade. There was no moment where she apologized and I delivered a perfect speech. There was a hearing where the divorce finalized, and she avoided my eyes. There was a job offer that paid less but felt honest. There was a morning where I woke up and didn't think of her first. On my first day at the new job, my manager shook my hand and said, "We're glad you're here." It wasn't grand. It was enough. I still think about that Monday sometimes. About the way power can make people forget who they were when they were hungry. About how easy it is to confuse ambition with permission. If there's a lesson, it's not about betrayal. It's about self-respect. About noticing when someone's success requires your silence. About understanding that dignity isn't loud. It's choosing not to stay where you're treated like a liability. Healing didn't make me harder. It made me clearer. And clarity, I learned, is the quiet revenge of a life rebuilt with intention.